For parents, they're always asking me, how can I know if my son or daughter goes off to college and they're gonna? So you really can't. And there's nothing that I can point to with my parents or siblings or friends where they could have done anything different. The thing that I would say is, as soon as you do detect that problem, step in and convince that person to stop isolating. Let's bring it out into the light and talk about it.
Substance use disorder touches all our lives, and often we feel hopeless or frustrated in our pursuit to understand how and why it happens.
Welcome to APC Recovery Cafe, where we discuss the topics and trends around substance use, provide education and resources, offer recovery support, and also discuss prevention tactics, all through the stories of the people who have been there.
We invite you to grab your favorite coffee or tea and join us for a variety of guests that will bring understanding, information, connection, and hope.
Together, we can break the stigma and pave a brighter future for each other.
Hey folks, welcome into this episode of the APC Recovery Cafe. My name is Art Wimberly. I'm a person grateful to be in long-term recovery, and I'm a volunteer for the Addiction Prevention Coalition. And today we have in the studio the Executive Director of APC, Carrie Wimberly. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning.
Good morning. You want to introduce our guest?
I do. So today we're very excited to have Tyler Harris with us. Tyler is outreach something. Director of Outreach. At Unbound Grace, and we're very familiar with and friends with John Stakely, who founded Unbound Grace, and you work with him. And so I reached out to John and said, hey, maybe you want to come back on. It's been a while. And he's like, well, I could, but I really think you ought to reach out to Tyler because he's got a great story to tell and is doing great work here. And so thank you so much for being willing to join us today.
Yeah,
welcome.
Thank y'all for having me. I'm humbled to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So I noticed you have a cup of coffee.
I do.
Is that standard for you every morning, or? Yeah?
It is for the most part. Yeah, it's either black coffee or green tea.
Oh.
Okay,
Just
black
straight.
or green, just straight.
Just straight. Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Pretty boring.
Yeah. Now, how long have you been with Unbound Grace?
About 3 years.
Okay.
Yep. About 3 years. I actually started part time because it was just John, and he's like, hey, why don't you come help out part time? And after being on board for, I think it was 4 or 5 months, he was like, we've got a big need. Why don't you come on full time? So
Yeah, nice. Yeah. And that's about the time we met you, I think, when you were coming on board full time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So part of what goes on in the podcast is we're telling current story about what's going on, but we like to go back and kind of figure out how you got here, because we're going to assume that you didn't grow up thinking, yes, my life work will be in recovery, right? Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning. Kind of, are you from the Birmingham area, from Alabama?
I am. Yeah, born and raised here in Birmingham.
Yeah. What part?
So grew up in kind of the 280, 119 corridor over there.
Okay.
So grew up going to Briarwood.
Yeah.
And kind of lived in that area my whole life.
Yeah, we did as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our kids went to Oak Mountain.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would have been zoned for Oak Mountain.
Yeah.
So,
So, normal family life? I mean, whatever normal is?
Yeah. Normal family life,
Any
honestly.
sports, any extracurricular activities in school?
Lots of sports. I kind of tried everything, but basketball and football were what stuck. And
I could see, the height. I could see.
I had the height. I didn't have the vertical jump to even though I'm tall, I still needed that. But I was okay. And then I ended up really just falling in love with football. And
okay.
So,
play for Briarwood?
Play for Briarwood. Yeah.
Loved it?
Through senior year, loved it. I always had Division I athletes in front of me. So I never started on the D-line. I started in special teams, but still got a little playing time. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I loved football.
What'd you love about it?
Really everything. Well, I say everything. I didn't love the exhaustion and the conditioning physical. And the physical, but I just loved that they let you put on pads and hit people. It was fun. And just, the game, it's really like violent chess. Even from being
violent chess.
I never heard
I kind of played a
before.
lot of different positions through the years. I was a running back, I was a wide receiver. But in high school, I was a linebacker and defensive lineman. And, even down in those positions where you think, okay, his job is just to hit the guy who's 6 inches in front of him once the ball snaps. There's so much going into it. It's such a mental game. And so the players at the top of their field are really smart and very, there's a lot of mental acuity that goes into it. So, I enjoyed kind of all of it, the physicality of it, the strategy, the camaraderie, feeling like you're in a band of
I was a
brothers.
cheerleader in high school, and I really enjoyed, we would compete, and there was there was just so much that went into it. I mean, it was very physical, and, the two-a-days and all that. I mean, it was a lot, but I loved being part of a team, that was working really hard towards things. And I know when we had kids, we always encouraged them to get into something that was team related, that has some intensity, because I just think you learn things from that you don't learn any other way.
Yeah. And I think in addition to the camaraderie and team building that it teaches you, sports teach you mental toughness.
Yeah.
And, I remember so many times when we were doing workouts in the weight room in the off season when our strength coach would push us past what we ever thought we could do.
Yes.
You're doing a plank or whatever, and he's just screaming at you to hold the position, and you're thinking, my body says I can't hold it anymore.
Yes.
And then he says 30 more seconds, and you're like, I can't do one more second.
Yeah.
And then 31 seconds later, you've done it.
Yes.
So
It teaches you that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so substance use is part of your background, I assume.
Yeah. So
when did that happen, and how did that start?
Yeah, that started. So I didn't drink or use at all in high school.
Okay.
It really wasn't until I went to college. I went to Auburn in 2010.
Okay.
And I mean, I had a great experience at Auburn, at least at first.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even that I got involved in some party scene or that I made a bad group of friends once I got there. It was like the same buddies that I'd known my whole life that I grew up with. Yeah. We all went to Auburn together, and they started experimenting with weed. Actually, it started with spice at the time.
Okay.
I'm sure y'all are familiar.
Yeah.
The synthetic marijuana, and a lot of that's been banned now, and now we know it's in different forms and Delta 8 and all that. But back then, spice had just hit the shelves. Yeah. It was, it was legal, and that's how my friends got me to try it. They had smoked marijuana, and wanted me to try that with them, and I said, no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to break the law. Yeah. But then they said, hey, we bought this in a store. This is legal. You can buy it in a gas station. Yeah. Just try it with us. And I was like, this.
And that's a whole different topic. Of all the things that are available in the convenience stores now. That
for a while it did.
Adolescents.
A lot of things were outlawed, but now it's way more than ever.
Way more.
And I don't see the regulators catching up. I don't know about y'all.
Yeah.
So I mean, they convinced me to try it, and I thought this is probably a dumb idea, but I'll give it a try. Yeah. And I loved the way it made me feel.
Really?
Yeah.
From the first time?
I loved it. I tried it for the first time. It scared me. Yeah. But I liked that, and it blurred my reality. Yeah. Just what a lot of substances do. It's the reason a lot of people use them, and so I liked that, and and it was those early months of using were pleasant experiences. It was all, we're having fun, we're laughing, we're listening to music. It's just this is all the fun stuff. Yeah.
They all work till they don't. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And really, that's all it was fun. I had nothing that I needed to self-medicate. There was no pain or trauma in my past. Yeah. It was just a fun thing. Yeah. At the same time, I had a lot of cognitive dissonance because I'm a Christian, and I was then, so I knew I'm probably not supposed to be doing this. Yeah. But I just kind of suppressed that part of my conscience. Right. Because this is fun and I want to keep doing it. Yeah.
So that was early in college?
Yeah, that was second semester freshman year. So
okay. And then, so was the use just weekends and whatever, and then it progressed, or what was the progression?
Yeah, it was occasional.
Yeah.
Weekends or just whenever we could get our hands on it.
Yeah.
But that became more and more frequent.
Okay.
And really, pretty quickly, it became apparent that I was using it differently than my peers.
Really?
So, they could, get high on the weekend, then go to class during the week. And, they could use it responsibly, and still kind of maintain a normal life. But for me, I wanted to be high all the time.
Wow.
If this is fun, if this is makes me feel better, it's enhancing. I thought it enhanced,
Yes.
My daily life, then why not do it all the time?
So that happened pretty quickly.
It's pretty quick, yeah.
Okay.
Within months, so that by the summer after my freshman year,
Yeah.
I've only been using for maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
And at that point, I started smoking weed as well too.
Yeah.
There was one day we couldn't get our hands on the spice.
Yeah.
The store was closed or something.
Yeah.
Buddy said, "Well, I've got some weeds." It's like, bring it on.
Yeah.
It became for me an almost everyday thing.
Yeah.
And by that summer, it was every day.
Yeah.
Was anybody noticing? Anybody pointing out, hey, maybe this is too much? Family system, anybody say anything at that point?
I was, y'all know that dishonesty and addiction go hand in hand.
No.
And wow, I was the king manipulator. Spun a very thick web of lies and deceived everyone in my life except for these few guys that I was using with. And even they were like starting to point the finger and say, "Hey, this is problematic."
It's pretty heavy when your peers start.
Yeah.
Right?
Like even the guys that are high with me are like, "You're overdoing it." But my parents had no idea. My brother was there with me at Auburn at the time. He had no idea. My girlfriend at the time had no idea. Yeah. So it was really, and I was still pretty involved in a campus ministry at Auburn, and so that was like one whole group of friends that also had no idea. I was kind of segmenting my life.
Yeah.
And, it started off as I'm segmenting my life to this just little group of guys who I'm using with.
Yeah.
But after a while, I even had to segment it from them and start hiding my use from them.
Yeah.
Because, they would start giving me a hard time about it. And, hey, maybe you need to slow down or judging me.
You can even hear in the story the slow, you call it separating from self. You're starting to compartmentalize pieces of yourself.
Yeah.
And it's getting deeper and deeper as time goes on. It's so insidious we don't know where we're going with that.
But it's such a clear example. When we're talking to parents or when we're doing prevention education, even the understanding of you take two people side by side that have similar backgrounds, and you introduce a substance. The way that the person interacts with that substance, if they have a pleasant experience, can look totally different. Like that wanting to be high all the time, wanting that feeling all the time versus, okay, I can, it's fun on the weekends, but I can take it or leave it. Yeah. I mean, you just can't know. You can't look at a person and say you're going to have that, experience or not. Yeah. And it's just different. It's just, there's something about each one of us that, can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like for parents, they're always asking me, how can I know what you said? If my son or daughter goes off to college and they're going to.
Yes.
So you really can't. And there's nothing that I can point to with my parents or siblings or friends where they could have done anything different.
Right.
But the thing that I would say is as soon as you do detect that problem, step in and convince that person to stop isolating. Yeah. Let's bring it out into the light and talk about it.
And that's one of the things that when we go in workplaces or anytime we're able to talk about prevention, the thing that we're saying is, okay, let's break the stigma. Mm-hmm. This is common. Mm-hmm. This is out there. And what we want people to do is, okay, let's address it early and often, instead of that isolation that leads to more use, it leads to more dependence, but until we're, able to really talk about it and then go and talk to your, physician, go and talk to a counselor, this is not a moral failing. This is part of our culture now. You know, young people are exposed to this. So they're, you know, many, if not most of them, are going to experiment with it. So being able to talk about it as a family, and not be, oh my gosh, I can't believe you, you know. But I mean, it's an uphill battle. But I think that's where we need to get to.
And that's why I think y'all are so amazing. Is y'all are on the preventative side,
trying,
which is rare in the addiction world. Everyone's treating, everyone's reacting.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell parents: is try to be preventative. Have those, like you said, the preventative conversations.
Yeah.
And you know, leave the door open that if you do start to struggle, come back and let's talk about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how did the story progress or go downhill?
Yeah, well, it did go downhill.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, we usually don't get people in here. Oh yeah, you know, we figured it out. No, I'm good.
Yeah. Smoked a little weed, but you know, I came to my senses. And here I am.
Yeah.
I'm cured. It started off as spice and marijuana, but then when I went back my sophomore year, it progressed to alcohol as well. So kind of the same thing. I had said. You know, there was a weird, I don't know if it was like a holier than thou thing that I had where I was like, I know that I'm getting high and smoking this weed, but I'm not going to drink.
I'll never do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to drink with you guys.
Yeah.
But you know, that lasted 5 seconds, and then I drank, and it was the same thing. I like the way this makes me feel.
Yeah.
It's blurring my reality. This is fun. We're all having fun. And again, with that, it's easier in my experience for alcohol to get out of control quicker than weed or marijuana, just because you're so much more impaired. It's more of a physical toll.
Plus, it's so socially not just accepted; it's pushed on
Encouraged.
us. On the
Yeah.
culture.
But pretty much from the beginning, and this goes with any substance I ever used, I had no control.
Okay.
You know, those in episode, you know, drinking or using, I had no governor on my pace or amount. And, you know, I would even go into it saying, I'm just going to have a couple beers.
Yeah.
And then I would always, you know, just get drunk every time. I just couldn't seem to stop.
The old saying, you know, one's too many and 100's not enough.
Yeah. Exactly. But none of my friends were like that. They were all normal drinkers. And so they were, you know, there was like, whoa, you know, Tyler, what are you doing? And, you know, you're embarrassing yourself. And, so that made me isolate more. And I don't, you know, looking back, my friends were just college kids too. They didn't know how to help someone.
Yes.
Right.
Which again speaks to the importance of what y'all do and educating people on how to care for those, even their peers that are struggling. But they didn't know how to help. And so, you know, I don't, my isolation was, I would say, a result of my willingness to persist, or my desire against any odds to persist in drinking or using. Come what consequence, whatever.
The obsession.
Like, you know, I would say that for me, my addiction became idolatry. You know, it became a place of like, you know, myself basically is in the place of God.
Yeah.
You know, I am my God now, and I'm just living to please myself. And I would sacrifice anything on the altar of
and I do think that folks that haven't experienced that, even when they're watching it with a loved one, it is almost impossible for them to understand what's really going on. But both physically, spiritually, emotionally, all of those are intertwined, I think.
Yeah. And on the spiritual side, you know, my that cognitive dissonance never fully went away. Always, this whole time I knew, because, you know, I continued to drink and use pretty much more and more frequently through my sophomore year. And that cognitive dissonance never went away. I always knew I'm running from God. But I, you know, a certain point, as y'all know, there's a quote I love that says, I want, all addictions start here. And then through small steps, want becomes need.
Yep.
And that was true for me. It went from being a fun thing that I do with my friends to a thing that I've got to have this to get through the day. I am dependent, you know, even if not physiologically, and I was at points, I'm dependent mentally. And sometimes even spiritually, just to numb what I know is that, you know, my conscience telling me I need to turn back. So I ended up, things ended up coming to a head at Auburn when my sophomore year, I ended up drinking too much and winding up in East Alabama Medical Center. And I don't remember a lot from that night, but I mean, I apparently was at the apartment by myself. My roommates were gone, and they just found me drunk and passed out. And so when I woke up in the hospital, my dad and my brother were there.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first time that my parents were clued into that something was wrong. And, you know, they knew it's not normal for your son to wind up in the hospital with alcohol poisoning and, you know, having not even known that he drank.
Yeah.
So they ended up taking me home, and I thought I would go home for like a week and kind of like get my head straight and then go back to school.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go back to Auburn for another 2 years.
Wow.
So they did everything that they could to help me. My addiction and alcoholism spiraled from there.
Okay.
They got me into counseling. You know, they had me meeting with pastors at our church, and you know, it really, again, wasn't anything that they did wrong. It was just that I was so stubborn-headed, and
you weren't ready.
I wasn't ready, and at the same time, I also felt like, well, now my pain is heightened. I have more of a reason to self-medicate.
Yeah. Because now you've got a layer of guilt and shame laid on top.
Exactly.
It's public in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. And all my friends are back at Auburn. Like, they're moving on without me. They're going to graduate without me. So feeling even more isolated.
Yeah.
So I ended up, you know, I got into a pattern where, you know, I was drinking on my way home from work. And, you know, I'm ashamed to say that. I know how dangerous drinking and driving is. But, you know, I was at that place, you know, the jumping off point where I didn't really care if I lived or died. And there were many days that I hoped I would, you know, run off a bridge or hit a tree. And, you know, I just didn't think that my life mattered at all. And I kind of looked at the rap sheet of the damage that I had done to relationships and my family, and I just felt like I don't deserve to live. But, you know, that caught up to me, and it was one of many instances of God's grace in my life where I was in a car accident, but I wasn't hurt. Neither was anyone else. I ran into a tree, ended up getting arrested for a DUI. And that was one of several, like I said, just instances of God's grace where at the time I hated it and I would have done anything to get out of it. But looking back, wow, he pulled me back from the edge.
Yeah.
You know, he grabbed me right before I ran off the cliff. And that day that I got the DUI, my parents, it was a 2-minute walk from my parents' house where I was living at the time. And so I had called my mom and said, hey, you know, I got in this accident and I think the police are on their way. So she came over and she was standing there, and she called my dad. So he came from work. So they were both standing there watching me get arrested. You know, they watched me fail miserably all the field sobriety tests. And, you know, at the end of all this, the officer just said, hey, he's been really compliant, and you guys seem like good parents. I'll give you the choice. You can take him home and discipline him yourselves, or I can book him for the night for DUI. And with tears in their eyes, they said, book him.
Wow.
So, you know, I was so upset that they did that, but man, am I so grateful now.
Yeah.
They knew I had to feel the consequences of my actions, and that, you know, I needed that to be able to wake up. Yeah. And so, yeah, spent that night in jail. And, you know.
So what do you remember about that?
About the night in jail?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Lots of unpleasant memories. I remember, I mean, I was booked at maybe 4 or 5 p.m. And so, you know, about middle of the night, I wake up, start, you know, the hangover kicking in jail, and they won't give you Advil.
Anything, yeah.
I couldn't even get water. I was sick.
Yeah.
I was in there with some interesting characters.
Yeah.
It was not a pleasant night. And I knew the whole time that when I got out of jail, a lot of people in my life that I had still been hiding all this from were going to know.
Yeah.
This was the last straw. And, you know, my girlfriend at the time, her family, you know, other friends as well, that this was just going to come out, and they were going to find out what had been going on.
Yeah.
And it did. And so that was almost like the last straw where I lost whatever little I had been hanging on to at the time. And, you would think that would be enough, that would be bottom. You'd be like, okay, you've lost everything, time to correct course and accept the help that's being offered to you. But I still just dug in a little bit further and said, no, I still need to self-medicate this pain. And so my parents ended up helping me get into a rehab in Opelika, the Reprieve.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful,
12-step
Yes.
immersion amongst other things.
facility. Yeah.
Look, let me ask you a question, and I know you don't want to tell your parents' story, but I'm wondering if, in reflection now, or maybe y'all have talked about it, because you had been dealing with this for a few years, most of which they didn't know, but they did know some because of the incident in Auburn, and then now the wreck and the DUI. Anything that they've shared with you about how they were able to make that decision then to say, no, go ahead and take him in? Have y'all talked about that at all? Or because that's a fairly
big.
quick change for parents
Yes.
at that point to be able to, take that fearful move right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and for the sake of brevity, I'm skipping over a lot of
Yes.
Yeah.
Stuff that happened.
details and events, but because there were multiple instances that they would catch me drinking and
Yeah.
they would throw it out, and then I'd find a way, or they'd catch me, getting high. Or,
Yeah.
But I think it was a couple things. It was one that they felt like they'd exhausted all options besides rehab.
Gotcha.
So I had been in addiction counseling. I'd been going to Celebrate Recovery, and working with the pastors at our church, and they just felt like these are all the resources that we know of that are not inpatient treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet you're getting worse, and you just got a DUI.
Yeah.
And my parents loved me so much. They saw how depressed I was.
Yeah.
They knew that I was suicidal. They'd taken me into a psychiatrist, and he'd said I was one of the worst cases of clinical depression he'd ever seen. And so I got on an antidepressant, and they saw me spiraling, and they thought, like, we've done everything outside of treatment that we can do.
Yeah.
We're not going to sit around and just hope you get better. We are going to. So they met, I can't remember his name, Robbie.
Keebler?
Robbie Keebler.
Keebler, yeah. ALR,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how they met him, but he came over to our house, and he talked with me, and I remember him being really stern, and I remember being like, I don't like this guy. But
A lot of people have said that until later.
Yeah.
But he said, he talked about ALR, he talked about the River Reprieve. So I actually went out, and my dad and I kind of toured ALR. And I remember leaving thinking, I'm never going there.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful downtown Bessemer. Right?
yeah. And as we left, I just told my dad, like, I'll go be homeless before I go there. And he said, well, I didn't actually plan for you to go here. I was just trying to kind of scare you straight by taking you out here. And and I talked to some of the guys that live there and stuff. But he ended up telling us about the Reprieve. So that's where I went, and back then it was only 60 days. They've expanded to be a year or even more maybe. But at the time it was just 60 days, and I love the staff there. I have only good things to say about the program. But you can have the best silver bullet of a program,
Yes.
and if I'm not willing to change.
Right.
But yeah, I ended up when I came back to Auburn doing well in school. I met my wife. We graduated, got married. And everything on paper was great. I mean, I got a good job in sales. We moved back here to Birmingham, and my wife is just wonderful. I really outpunted my coverage with her.
Yeah.
But a few months into our marriage, I relapse, and I start drinking. And I think that there are several factors that played into that. For one thing, I'd stopped really working any kind of program. I wasn't doing any recovery work. I had several years sober at the time, and I was just pretty complacent. And for another thing, I think, the spiritual change for me is about to happen in the story, but this is that pre-spiritual change. And so I would say I had surrendered one area of my life over to God, and that was my sobriety.
Yeah.
Everything else was just doing it the way Tyler wants to do it. And so I would say I was effectively using God as a means to an end.
Yeah.
And really, even sobriety, although it's a noble, goal to attain, it was like selfishly motivated for me because I just wanted it so that I could, check the boxes in life, graduate, find a wife, get the job, get the house. I just wanted what I wanted in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost like what a big book would say is religious but not spiritual.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. And so, as opposed to surrendering all of my life to God, the big book talks about surrendering ourselves to Him entirely, our will to Him entirely. It was like I gave Him this much of my will. And so I think that played a huge part in it as well. And there was some depression and things as well. But yeah, I started drinking, and my wife had never seen me drink before. So I was sober when we met, and to her, it was just kind of a cool part of my story. Oh, he doesn't drink; he's in recovery, but she never seen the reality of how bad it was before. So yeah, I did everything that I knew how to get sober, and everything that I worked before. I was rigorous. I was doing 90 and 90. I got a new sponsor in Birmingham. I was calling my old sponsor, who was still in Georgia at the time. And that was every single day. And I could make it a week, maybe two, but then I'd do a binge of a couple days. And then, basically I could make it through the week. But on the weekend I was binge drinking, or, maybe not even that. Maybe during the week I would start binge drinking. So I couldn't do it. And I've never, I think I mentioned this earlier, I've never been able to casually drink.
Yeah.
My drinking is always really almost a blackout.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not even really fun.
Yeah.
The fun window for me is like 20 minutes, and then it's like I'm just kind of sick, and so this was very eye-opening for my wife, and I put her through a lot. It was just really scary for her, and she, I think, thought, who is this guy? This is not the guy that I married. So yeah, at the time our church stepped in to walk beside us, and that was huge. That was really big. There were a couple guys at the church that were in recovery, and so they met with me, and one of them took me to meetings, and it was just our small group at church was caring for us during that time. But again, all the best things in the world, all the best and well-meaning external treatment could be happening, but if there's stubbornness here, unwillingness to change here, there was, I guess, the difference between drinking last time, or the first bout with addiction, and this time is my level of honesty. I would say, man, that was like the best gift God ever gave me, was the gift of honesty, far and away. And He gave me that when I got sober up in Georgia. And I say it's a gift because I've been a pathological liar most of my life, really since I was a kid. My parents would definitely attest to that. So even before I ever touched any substance, I was just kind of a lying person. But God gave me the gift of rigorous honesty, even at at the risk to myself and my reputation. I would be honest, admit when I had screwed up, or if I did tell a lie, I would go back to that person and say, "Hey, I just lied to you." Never been able to do that in my life. So this time around, even though I couldn't seem to stop drinking, at least for sustained periods of time, I was honest always.
Yeah.
Never lied to my wife about it. And I think that helped as well, because if I had been into the lying and the isolating, then who knows how much further it would have gone.
Yeah.
But when I couldn't stop on my own, again, from basically just doing everything that I knew from before, meetings and sponsorship and steps and stuff, I ended up going back to treatment. And this time I went to Turning Point in Thorsby, Alabama. So, Turning Point was great. It was a weird period for them because their previous executive director had just left. Yeah. They didn't have their new director. I think Brian Stockard is there now. Yeah. So it was kind of an interim period. But again, God used that time. For me, it's never been, my story at least, has never been, this was such a great program, or this was such a great facility. It's really just that God, that's where God did the work in me. Yeah. So He did. And it was actually while I was at Turning Point that I had this kind of spiritual paradigm shift. Yeah. And basically that shift was the realization I'm using God as a means to an end. Yeah. I've only really, these last several years, I thought I was a Christian and I thought that I was following Jesus, but really I'm just, he's a tool in my tool belt that I'm going to pull out whenever I need, just make sure that I don't drink so that I can keep doing what I want to do in life and not let this ruin my life again. And ironically, there's not a lot of joy that comes from that. That's a pretty joyless Christianity.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty just vapid and vacuous spiritual life. So at the same time that I thought I'm getting everything I want, I was actually pretty empty.
Yeah.
So yeah, that paradigm shift was happening, and I just realizing I want to, Jesus in John 15 talks about abiding in the true vine. That's what I want. I want to abide in the true vine. I want to be like the Samaritan woman at the well in John 4. I want to drink from the living water. I want to, just abide in true life. And right around the time that I was having that paradigm shift, John Stakely, who had just founded Unbound Grace, came out to Turning Point and met with me. So he and my brother were friends at Beeson in seminary together, and my brother reached out and said, "Hey, I heard you just started this ministry. Would you mind going and meeting with my brother? Tyler's struggling." So John did, and he drove out to Turning Point. He met with me, and he shared Unbound Grace as a nonprofit ministry focused on counseling and discipleship for people that are either pre-treatment or post-treatment, kind of filling that void. They don't know if they need treatment or not, or they're coming out of treatment. They need a safety net, some kind of transition from a safe recovery bubble back into normal life.
Yeah.
Or maybe people who don't need treatment at all,
right,
but they need that support. And but critically, he kind of said this at the same time that I was. It was almost like we said it together.
Yeah.
Where he was saying our ministry philosophy isn't sobriety as an end in and of itself.
Yes.
We seek for abstinence-based sobriety for everyone we serve, but the end we seek is relationship with Jesus, and that sobriety is one of many good fruits that come from abiding in the true vine. Yeah. And that sobriety is a byproduct of that relationship with Him, and that was just like light bulb. This is what I've been looking for. So yeah, John, I ended up meeting with John and participating with Unbound Grace for about a year after I left Turning Point. And then kind of at the same time, I felt a call to ministry, which is a little weird to feel a call to ministry when you're in rehab. But I just thought, hey, maybe God can use me somehow. I didn't think He could with my rap sheet, but I ended up, enrolling in classes in seminary. And then, a couple of years after I got out of treatment, John asked me to come on board with Unbound Grace. And it's just been such an incredible experience.
Yeah.
To be honest, I said I would never work in the recovery field.
Yeah.
Just because, man, I've been to multiple rehabs and I've been on the other side of it, and I just know it's full of heartache, it's full of heartbreak, it's full of pain and loss, and the victories may seem few, and I didn't want to do it, but God provided this opportunity, and He gave me the experience. That I am, I'll say with Paul, I'm the chief of sinners. And that I am more stubborn than most, but God gave me the gift of sobriety, and more than that, He gave me the gift of Himself, and so it's been a privilege to get to share that with people.
All right, well, we're running out of time, so I see a book here that I've never seen before. So can you just tell us what that is, show it to them?
So this is Unbound Grace. It's John Stakely's, our founder's new book, hot off the press, just published, and it's really it's John's story, and it's the Unbound Grace story, and so it's to me what makes Unbound Grace unique is almost the hybrid approach. It's counseling, but it's also discipleship. So for people that aren't familiar, discipleship is like sponsorship, but with a singular direction. I'm not making disciples of me, I'm making them of Jesus. So that's to me the biggest difference. And I would say by far not all the people that we serve are Christians.
Yeah.
We get people from all along the faith spectrum or lack thereof.
Yeah.
That's not a requirement to be served by Unbound Grace.
Yeah.
But that's, to me, being in AA for so many years, that was one thing that I always wished I had, someone whose faith aligns with mine and gets recovery.
Yeah.
And so who can walk with me along that path of recovery. So that's what Unbound Grace is.
Awesome.
So for folks that might be listening or watching, tell them how they can get in touch with you and Unbound Grace.
Yeah, absolutely. So our website, unboundgrace.life. People always get confused. It's not .com or .org. It's .life.
I never heard of that.
Yeah.
Nice.
And you can reach out to me. All of our contact info is on our website, but it's Tyler at unboundgrace.life. I'd love to hear from you. And another thing I want to say is, we offer counseling. We have a discipleship program, actually, where if you want to get involved as a volunteer, you can start mentoring. We also have support groups. We have those for men struggling, for women struggling, and for loved ones of those that are struggling. And that all of our services are completely free of charge. So we don't charge for any of our services. We're completely funded from individuals and churches. So, I would just invite y'all to reach out, even if you just aren't sure if it'd be a good fit for you, reach out and, get a consultation.
Yeah, so this could be either from the loved one, family members, friends, or someone who's struggling at some level with substance use disorder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
And we do a lot of consultations, a lot of, treatment referrals for people that can say, we're struggling, but we don't know where to send our son or my husband or whoever.
That's good to mention, because sometimes folks are considering using something like what Unbound Grace does, and they're concerned that, well, it's a Christian organization. Maybe are they against treatment? But it sounds like you guys are pretty flexible when looking for options.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up. I always negate to say this. Unbound Grace as a whole is supplementary, we're complementary, not supplementary. So, our participants are doing AA, Celebrate Recovery. They can go to this treatment center or that one. They can do Smart Recovery or no recovery program in general. Just do Unbound Grace or just go to church, whatever. Basically, we come alongside people and help them create a tailored recovery program for them. A lot of our participants are involved in other recovery endeavors, and that's actually by design. Yeah. Unbound Grace wants to come alongside with that.
Fantastic. It's great.
Okay, so we always like to end with our guest actually encouraging somebody that might be listening that maybe is struggling with some level of substance use or has gone to treatment before, but they're still struggling. So what would you say? What would you say to encourage them today based on what you've walked through?
Wow. I would say one general thing and then one specific to my story. So the general is, I don't know if we've said it on here, but when I first came in and we were talking, I heard hope mentioned multiple times. Y'all were talking about hope. Yeah. That's one thing I love about Addiction Prevention Coalition is you guys are all about hope. Yeah. In what can be such a dark field, such a dark place. Yeah. The people who we serve, the people that come to us are in the darkest point in their lives, many of them, when they come to us. So the first thing is just to know that there is hope. Yeah. If I can recover, so can you, or so can your loved one. Yeah. The second thing, and more specific to me, I would say there's a verse in Jeremiah that says, delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And for the longest time, I just thought that meant God is like a genie in a bottle, and if I delight in him just right, then he'll give me what I want. That's not it at all. It's that if I delight myself in him, he'll remove my desire for alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, other things, and replace it with his desires, with holy desires, and ones that actually bring joy and bring life. Yeah. Christianity calls that sanctification. The recovery world calls it recovery, but it is the God by grace given change of my desires over time to where I no longer am a slave to my desire to drink and get drunk and get high. I'm free today. Yeah. And
amen.
I don't have to think about that anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Tyler, thanks so much for coming and sharing today. I know people will be blessed by it. Folks, we hope you were, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode of the APC Recovery Cafe.
One of the things that APC is known for is being a connector, because we're stronger together.
Not only are we there for those who are suffering through substance use disorder, but we're there for family members, and we really take our job seriously.
We all have personal reason why we're in this field. We're changing people's lives one community at a time.